Welcome to Cultivating Victory Live. We're networking to build healthy food systems. And our special guest today is Carey Gillam, who's an investigative journalist and an author. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about her book, Whitewash. Now, before we get started, a couple of disclosures are on the screen here. We're basically here to present information and share ideas. And we're not making claims, we're not making recommendations, we're not providing professional advice. I think change begins when we start talking openly about what's happening in our food system. So with that, I want to introduce Carey. And Carey, I finished your book last night. I really love the way you opened up all the layers, all the moving parts in this picture about what's happening in the environment and in our food system, particularly with the chemical glyphosate, but with many of our agricultural chemicals. Tell us about your book.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. So I've been a journalist for more than 25 years. Primarily, I spent most of my career with Reuters, the international news agency. And I've covered a lot of different industries in my day, banking and insurance and real estate. But I was assigned in 1998 to start covering food and agriculture. And that meant learning in particular about Monsanto and the new genetically engineered seeds that they had just introduced to the marketplace, which of course were designed to tolerate being sprayed with glyphosate, Monsanto's Roundup herbicide, of which glyphosate is the active ingredient, the active weed killing ingredient. And this was pretty revolutionary for agriculture at that time to combine these seeds with this particular pesticide. And it really encouraged farmers, to use this, repeatedly over and over. And we have seen the use of this one chemical, just skyrocket because of the introduction of these genetically engineered crops. Some of the data shows that 40 million pounds annually in the US in the mid-90s to close to 300 million pounds just in the last couple of years. It's used on in production of over 70 different food crops. It's used not only by farmers, but, homeowners and on golf courses and forestry management and, parks and playgrounds. It's ubiquitous in our world. It's the most widely used, agrochemical in history. So my job as a journalist, of course, was to learn everything I could about not only the crops, but the chemicals, glyphosate and others that are used, in food and farming, to learn about, the market economics as well as the environmental implications and health implications and what it means for food and for farming. So that's what I've done for 20 some years. And that's, as I think I say in the introduction, when you put it all together, it's not a feel-good story. This widespread use, this overuse of a chemical that has been, tied to an array of detrimental impacts, has not been good for us in the end. And you're seeing it now start to erode, I believe. The use of it, because it's not nearly as effective as it used to be, and farmers are having to look for alternatives. We are going to have to shift our agricultural practices, and you're seeing that transition right now. So I'm hoping that the book, in laying out all of the risks that have come with the rewards, will help consumers and policymakers and farmers, and help everybody understand sort of all of the different elements as we move into a new era, I guess. Oh, I've lost your volume.
She muted us all.
Muted us all. Okay, now.
Sorry about that. So yeah, as I read your book, it was kind of like stepping back in time, looking at how this story unfolded over the years. And of course, we were introduced to this chemical as a very safe chemical that biodegraded completely within 3 days. Of course, we know it's not true,
right,
but it was kind of the mainstream belief for years and years that this thing was gone within days after you released it into the environment. And yet you think about it, and this is a chemical that was designed to eliminate green plants. And from an ecology perspective, you're eliminating primary production. There's a very small percent of primary production that's carried out by non-plants. But you ask yourself, you step back and look in hindsight and think, how did we ever let this get into the environment?
Right. Yeah, and that's a problem with a lot of pesticides, right? I think you could say that about a lot of different things. Chlorpyrifos, certainly right now, End-O-Sulfan and paraquat atrazine, they bring certain benefits. Certainly they bring profits to the chemical companies who want to push them out there, but it's often really hard to get reliable and truthful information out about the risks that go along with these chemicals. And that is, as I lay out in my book, again, that is very strategically by design by these companies that profit from these chemicals. They are working overtime in an array of, ways to dominate the narrative and to push their propaganda out and to convince policymakers and consumers and lawmakers and others not to worry about these risks. And that's probably the most alarming thing that I've learned in my research and what I lay out in the book is that, as you've said, there's been a much research out there that has shown that it doesn't bind tightly within the soil and, and dissipate and go away and leave no trace of it. The harm to the soil is something that has been pretty clearly shown in science over the years, but the chemical industries worked really hard to suppress that information, just as they did with weed resistance concerns until they no longer could do that because it was, apparent. It was these giant weeds right out there in the fields. They've suppressed evidence of harm to human health and to different other aspects of biodiversity and the environment. So that's an important part, we're not getting a balanced and honest debate or discussion. We're having the benefits of these pesticides, pushed upon us while they suppress and hide evidence of risk and harm. So the book and my work and my research, much as what you're trying to do, is really trying to bring truthful information to light so we can have balanced discussion and debate chemicals in our environment.
Exactly. In your book, you also talk a lot about the efforts within the agencies, within our government agencies,
right,
to suppress information about the chemicals and to work with industry to promote the benefits at the expense of the risk. Are the agencies doing anything more for the public than creating maybe a false sense of security?
That's a really good way to lay it out, right? We believe they're there to protect us. And the documents that, I've seen that come from inside the agency show, the working grunts, the scientists who are in there and toiling away. Many of them are, they're trying to do their jobs. They're trying to protect the public. They're trying to do the research and raise their arm and say, hey, there's a red flag here. But what you often see is that the supervisors, the higher ups, many times the appointed officials, are the ones saying, be quiet, go away. We don't want to hear that. You're wrong, and that happens time and time again. And not just with glyphosate, but with many other chemicals that are out there. And it's very discouraging. And it's not just in the EPA. We've seen it in the USDA and the FDA. And you're right. I think consumers are thinking we've got them out there, they're protecting us. And that's really not true. They're protecting corporate profits.
Yeah, I was talking to a government employee a couple of days ago. We were discussing your book, yeah, and this tendency within government agencies to promote industry. And the comment I was given is, well, yes, if we're not supporting industry, that's where all the taxes come from. That's where all the profits are generated. And so if you don't support industry, we don't have jobs. We don't have work within our agency. And I guess, again, it helped frame this question, are the agencies, would we be safer without an environmental protection agency, without a Food and Drug Administration?
Good.
Uh, and I guess for myself, I've been trying to imagine what that would look like. And I'd love to hear
Yeah.
other.
I don't know that I'm ready to go there. You know, I think there's a lot of big corporations that would say, yes, definitely, let's get rid of the EPA and, you know, the FDA and others. But, you know, I mean, there are baby steps, right? And you see this internal struggle, you know, with these agencies, and you see the watchdogs that try to hold them accountable. You know, there are a lot of good people that I've met and that I read about through their own emails and documents who are trying to protect us, you know, and trying to do the right thing. But chlorpyrifos, I think, provides the perfect example for this corrupt sort of mindset that dominates the EPA. You know, this insecticide that is marketed by Dow and many others, but is really Dow's baby, is used, you know, on 40,000 farms around the United States. It's used on fruits and vegetables. It's the fourth most prevalent pesticide found in our food supply by the FDA when they test that. And yet it's been banned from household use. And EPA scientists wanted to ban it from farming because they said the research now is so clear that this causes, you know, problems for children, that it's damaging to children's brains when they're exposed to it. We need to get this out of our food supply. They've said they cannot vouch for the safety of this chemical in our food or drinking water anymore. And yet it's still on the market. And why is that? Well, because Dow Agrochemical and their buddies at CropLife and others went and sat down with the Trump administration, threw a little money to the Trump inaugural fund, and, you know, it's still on the market. And will be for a considerable time frame, as they need to study it more now, they say. So, you know, I don't think that can be any more clear of a message that corporate interests are a priority within Washington, much more than public safety.
Right, right. And so I guess in your final chapter, you touch on a lot of solutions, potential solutions, and you really hit the big players. You hit the cover crops, you hit the biologicals, and we're seeing the growers who switch to these methods and do it with the right information are quickly becoming more profitable even in their first year of transition. So this is where I believe the industry is headed. But do you see solutions for what happens within government and this little play of interactions that you just described with the Trump administration? But we've seen it with every administration.
Right. Yeah, I mean, that comes back to, right, how you vote, how active you are. You know, if we want to see a paradigm shift in Washington and the influence that money has on our policies and, you know, influencing our lawmakers, we have to make we have to make a difference. People have to stand up and demand a change, but that's not where we are, I think, right now. If you look at what's going on in Washington, you're right. I mean, it's, you know, money talks. We are a capitalistic society, and you know, wealthy people making money off of these publicly traded companies are applauding their efforts to suppress regulation and to push these products out into the marketplace. So, you know, until people educate themselves and want to be more active in politics, you know, maybe this is the way it's going to stay. But I think education is super important for all of us, right? We can vote with our wallets, we can change the way we eat, we can make our opinions heard, but you can't do it unless you have the facts. So that's what I'm trying to do through the book and through other, you know, things that I'm doing with my work and my research, is just provide people with information so they can choose, you know, what they want to do with it.
I like that you brought up the concept of voting with your wallet. We can try to be good, active citizens and read through policies and go to the polls ready to vote, but there's a lot of interaction and there's a lot of fine print that never makes it to the voting ballots. And so people don't always understand what they're voting for. But when you vote with your wallet, you have more power, I think.
Exactly. You know, I've talked to so many people and they, you know, it's different for every individual, really. I mean, I've talked to a woman who every single thing in her house is organic, you know, organic cotton sheets and organic shampoos and organic soaps and that sort of thing. Other people are more comfortable. Maybe they just want their organic milk and their meats and their fruits. You know, there are people whose focus is on organizing their community to convince their school board to stop using pesticides on playgrounds. You know, different people, as I said, it resonates differently. Some people want to grow their own food, or they want to, you know, connect with local farmers markets and local farmers to source their food that way. Maybe organic is not as important to some people, but they want, you know, to connect with farmers who are growing things in a more sustainable way, perhaps, you know, but using some pesticides, but not others. I mean, it's different for every person, but again, I guess I come back to, unless you have the information, you can't make educated decisions. So that's all I'm trying to do. I'm certainly not trying to push anybody in one direction or the other than to just provide some truth and transparency to a debate that I think has been dominated by corporate interests and corporate propaganda for way too long.
I have a question. So on food labels, have you kind of got into that? You know, they they give us some basic nutritional facts and then an ingredient list, but obviously missing off of those ingredient lists are some of these very chemicals we're talking about. Do you think that'll ever change, or how will that?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. The whole GMO labeling battle was so interesting to watch, I think, because the companies, the chemical companies and others, one of their main reasons for opposing that was because they figured consumers wouldn't buy it, right? If they knew what they were buying, you know. So that was a moment of transparency. You know, we don't want consumers to know what's in their food. I do think that, you know, consumer education is changing that, is shifting that dynamic to a certain extent. You see food companies becoming more aware. I've been in meetings with some of them, becoming more aware that there are pesticides in their foods, there are additives, other things they don't like, and they are voting with their wallets, and they are demanding change. And these food companies are trying to get ahead of that because they see this as a, you know, perhaps GMOs were the first issue. Pesticides are coming along now, and they're trying to figure out, how do we source food that's made with fewer pesticides? How do we put a sustainable label on our food? You know, how do we identify ourselves with a more healthy and sustainable food system? So food companies are awake and aware, you know, and consumers, I think, have pushed them there. But we're still baby steps, I think.
Yeah.
I remember a discussion more than 30 years ago. I guess I just dated myself, but as an undergraduate, I took an agricultural economics course where I remember sitting in the class and discussing, we were right in the middle of the farm crisis of the 80s, and discussing the tensions and what was causing these farms to shut down. And certainly the instructors in this course felt like the solution was really buying more direct. You know, we have to know the farmers, we have to know, we have to keep that money circulating at a smaller scale.
Sure.
And it's funny because at that time I viewed it very much from the farmer's perspective. But as the years go by, I think it's equally important for the consumer to really know how that food is being grown. And the best way to do that is to reduce this whole chain of middle industries between the farm and the table, so to speak,
Right.
that are handling the food. We have time for questions. This is a fantastic discussion, Carey. You have so much information on the subject, and we do have time for members of the audience if anybody has questions and wants to proceed. I believe if you go to the bottom of the screen there, you can unmute yourself and ask questions.
Maybe no questions. I have a question for you, Mary. I've been talking to more farmers just in the last few days who are working with USDA, starting to launch a research program for no-till practices in organic corn. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that or strategies. You know, they've been able to figure out some things for winter wheat and you know, soybeans and others, but that's a big thing holding farmers back in some, you know, some sectors from moving to organic, because they like the no-till, they want to protect the soil, but it seems like a problem in corn.
I do think it's clearly an area where we need more research. We're seeing a couple of things come out, both with no-till and more innovative styles of minimal tillage or different approaches. I don't know if you're familiar with vertical tillage is one that we're seeing, and strip tilling, and some of these methods that don't so much turn the soil over as they do just kind of aerate it a little bit.
Okay.
And some of the debates I've heard, and I think we really need more scientific information on this, deal with whether that overturn, you know, obviously when you overturn that soil and you break that top layer of surface microbes, you're destroying your ability to fix nitrogen. You're destroying this surface layer that protects the soil from erosion. You're doing lots of damage to the structure that is feeding plants and feeding the soil. But by providing aeration and kind of putting some breakage, there you're mimicking a little bit more of what happens in nature, where you have burrowing animals and this kind of thing that get down in the soil and create some airspace that kind of helps things circulate within the soil. So in terms of practical applications, yeah, we need more research, and cover cropping and even low height cover crops that maybe wouldn't necessarily compete with corn but would keep the soil covered are all things that need to be tried.
Right. Yeah, I think it's encouraging that I was encouraged to learn about USDA providing some money or trying to work with these companies to develop this research, specifically, you know, for no-till in organic corn. I think that's encouraging.
Carey, can I speak in here?
Yeah.
Thanks for writing the book. I'm reading it.
Oh, good.
I'm not finished with it yet. Haven't read the last chapter. I'm really looking forward to that. You might try searching the regenerative agriculture movement in Australia.
Oh.
They're a little ahead of us.
Okay.
And there's some interesting work being done. You can also check out just regenerative agriculture in the U.S. And you'll find a few individuals, particularly in North Dakota, that are doing some of that currently.
Right. I've been talking to as many of those people as I can, trying to learn all about the different techniques that they're employing. So, yeah, thank you. But Australia is interesting. I'm going to be traveling there in the summer.
Perfect.
With some people who are interested in this and want to know more. And so I'll learn a lot, hopefully.
Great. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm a Grow Green native landscaper and designer and wellness coach here in Austin, Texas. And I do a lot of sustainable courses, getting ready to do the Grow Green certification class again with the city of Austin.
Great.
And we're pretty green here, and the courses are over a period of 5 weeks, and they address different aspects from soil to plants to, you know, sustainability and design aspects. And the biggest thing I see is our seed population, our organic seed population diminishing. And as I understand it, there's only 8% of our seed population that is organic now, because the rest of the population has been infected.
Yeah.
So I'd like to know more about seed vaults and where these good seeds are being stored. I acquired a list of about 10 organic seed providers, and that's all that I know that there is left.
You know, that would be a great story. Maybe you and I should connect offline, and you could talk to me a little bit more about that. But that's certainly something I've heard about and talked with people about for years. You know, is sort of this diminishment of a choice for farmers, both conventional and organic, because the big seed companies, you know, Monsanto's the biggest seed company in the world. I don't know if people are aware of that. They own not only the engineered traits, but, you know, vegetable and other seed supplies. And yeah, and they have, of course, they've been buying up seed breeding companies and others. And, you know, that has been a concern that we're losing choice, certainly.
I agree. And I would love to connect. So
if you would, yeah, go on my website, or you can find my email that way, but I'd love to hear from you and work with you maybe on a story.
I'm a friend and partner of Mary's. So
okay, great.
We're connected.
Great.
Yeah, in fact, Carey, I'll jump in with my passion on that. Is that a lot of the research I did with native End-O-Fites centered on seed-borne End-O-Fites. And when you eliminate a seed genotype, you're not just eliminating the plant genetics. You're eliminating the genetics of dozens of microorganisms that reside inside that seed.
Yeah, it's people don't understand, I guess, the broad implications of, you know, what has been going on and what continues to go on with dominating, just in a handful of companies dominating our seed industry.
Yes, I work with local farmers markets here too, and participate in a few, and I talk to farmers all the time, and a lot of the same farmers here in the area. We have like 13 farmers markets in Austin, and we pull from farmers in a 120-mile radius of the area.
Yeah.
And a lot of the same farmers go to the different markets, but they produce their own seeds and make their own seeds from their plants, right?
Right.
Mary obviously can talk a little more scientifically about it than I can, but you know, I know that that's a strong concern for the farmers too.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Carey, it is 10:30, so we're pretty much out of time.
Okay.
And I just totally appreciate you coming out here today. I think this is such an important topic to get the word out on. And you've written a fantastic synthesis of all the different moving parts, all the layers to this onion that have made
a lot of layers, yeah.
pesticides such an incredible problem in our food system today.
It really is. Well, and thank you. I'm grateful for your interest in this opportunity. And, you know, it's not a cocktail chatter usually. Let's talk about pesticides. But obviously, I think it's really important to our world. We all eat, so we're all affected.